Welcome to Hey Sister. This is Season 2, Episode 8, The 4 Basic Skills for Parents and Children, Part 1. Hey Sister!
Hey sister!
Thanks for joining us. I'm Courtney Lewis.
And I'm Carly Ferguson. Welcome to our Sisterly Phone Call Inspired podcast.
Hop on our calls each week as we interview qualified guest experts and discuss the meaningful and sometimes mundane aspects of our lives.
We're so excited to connect with you, sister. Let's get talking.
Hey sisters, it's so good to be with y'all as we continue our month focusing on connections we make within motherhood. Today we're going to talk about 2 of the 4 basic skills that are taught within the Teaching Self-Government parenting philosophy. I'm Courtney Lewis and I'm joined by my sister Carly, and we are so excited to introduce y'all to our guests a little later. But for now, let me remind you that this month we've already discussed how mothers can inspire their families through pursuing personal and family missions. And last week we talked about parenting toddlers and specifically giving no answers to children. Let's keep these conversations going, shall we?
Yes, we shall. Today, I have the privilege of introducing a dynamic duo of guests. As y'all know from listening to our last 2 episodes, we are dedicating multiple episodes this month to learning from mentors who are experts at teaching self-government. Today's experts are mothers from the Austin, Texas area and are trained mentors who specialize in helping parents analyze family relationships and problem solve difficult situations by teaching principles of self-government. They also teach about the structure of a unified family atmosphere and the tools and skills needed for self-mastery, personal freedom, and family unity. Don't all those things sound so empowering and desirable? We think so too. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Rachael Moss and Janice Mireles.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to Hey Sister.
Rachel, would you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I'm Rachael. I live on some land out in Florence, Texas. I'm a certified mentor with Teaching Self-Government. I'm married to my husband of 22 years, and together we have 3 children, ages 12, 9, and 7, whom I home educate. I love to knit, to talk about all things herbal and homeopathic, but the thing I like best of all is books.
Amazing. All good things.
Janice, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I'm Janice, and I'm Rachel's neighbor and friend of 20 years, wife of 17 years, home educator of 3 children so far. I have one that's 2 days from 13, so not 12. Very important distinction. A 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I'm a TSG mentor. I am learning to embrace discomfort in order to live a more joyful life. For example, last year I bought a pop-up camper and have become a camper, which I never thought I would say, but it's led to letting us have more travel and adventure, which is something that is part of our family mission and something that we want. But hot tea and literature will always be my true loves. Second only to discussing literature with my friends, my husband, or my children, which is getting so much more fun as they get older. And I am really passionate about sharing my hard-won victories with those who want healing in their lives. Because as the scripture says, we overcome by the word of our testimony.
Wow. I love the overcome the hard-won battles. Like you're going to be sharing a big treasure with us today. So we're very grateful to have y'all both on. And I love getting to know y'all and hear about the lives that you lead and the excitement that you have within you that you're just ready to share about teaching self-government. So we would love to have y'all share a little bit more with us about the 4 basic skills. We've kind of barely touched on them or scratched the surface in our previous 2 episodes as we've talked with Nicolene and Paige, but we know that y'all can give us so much more and that we can go into depth. So Rachel, could you describe for us these 4 basic skills and what they are and the steps to achieving them?
Absolutely. The 4 basic skills are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. The good news is that the first 3 steps to all 4 skills are exactly the same. For following instructions, you're going to look at the person with a calm face, voice, and body, say okay or ask to disagree appropriately. You do the task immediately and check back. For accepting no answers or criticism, you look at the person with a calm face, voice, and body. You say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, and you drop the subject. For accepting consequences, you look at the person with a calm face, voice, and body. You say okay or ask to disagree appropriately. You do your consequence immediately, and you check back and drop the subject. For disagreeing appropriately, you're going to look at the person with a calm face, voice, and body. Ask to disagree appropriately. You'll explain your understanding of the person, explain your side, and then after the decision is made, you're going to say okay and drop the subject. So Nickling actually has written 4 children's books, and each book illustrates each skill. And they're really fantastic. I highly recommend investing in buying them. Every one of my children loves them, including the 12-year-old. So those help if you're getting kind of stuck on one skill or having a child that's having a hard time with one skill. But in the Moss family, these skills have really helped strengthen us by allowing my children to build confidence in handling adversity and disagreements on their own. So, for example, I was talking to my daughter and she just confided in me that once she figured out how to disagree appropriately, then she felt like she really had a voice or a say in her own life. And she no longer felt like I was a dictator. Now, granted, we did work on our roles inside of our family. So she understood that she was not an equal in authority, but that she is a really valued member of our family.
I love that. And I appreciate that you bring up the 4 books as well, because I have to this point finished and loved the Parenting a House United book. And I bought the 4 children's books, but I've only read 3 of them with my children so far. So I introduce a new one about every 2 weeks. We haven't gotten to the Disagree Appropriately book, but my kids have loved the books because they're in poem form. And so they're easy to remember and they relate very well back to the activities that children do. So the book Porter Earns a Quarter, there's reference to a soccer game and how the kid behaves during a soccer game. So it's not as stoic or robotic as maybe listing out the steps may sound to somebody, to a mother listening to this podcast. You might hear those things and be like, okay, I heard some of those steps and you lost me. But if you're reading it to a child, it is actually very well written so that it's poetic, it has good rhythm, and it relates back to a soccer game or to helping grandma in her yard. I mean, there was great analogies that make it actually applicable to a child, and it can help them to remember those steps.
Absolutely.
Are there any tools that are available from TSG to help moms remember what the steps are for themselves?
Yes, actually, there's something called cue cards, and it breaks down the skills, how to prep your children by pre-teaching them, how to correct negative behaviors, how to go into like the rule of 3, which is something I don't think we're talking about today. But then the card that helped me the most was the Calm Parenting card, which just is all focused straight at yourself, helping you to notice the chaos, checking in with yourself, like, am I calm? Am I seeking to understand my children? And then just help get you back on track so that you know what to say, so that each time your children have a behavior that you need to correct, because you're correcting behavior, not their hearts. And then when you have the cards and you use the script, it's not contrived at all. It actually is providing your children with a lot of stability and lowers their anxiety greatly, because it's the same exact thing every single time. And honestly, talk about cutting down on decision fatigue, because it used to be like, okay, now what do I do with this situation? What do I do with this situation? And instead, you're just well equipped. You're going to do the exact same thing every single time. You don't have to think about it. And once you get it down, you can really actually go almost into autopilot.
Right. Rachael, I like how you mentioned that decision fatigue is cut down by following these steps. And I know, Janice, you're prepared to talk to us a little bit about accepting corrections, which I love that aspect of corrections, is that it does cut down on decision fatigue. Could you explain a little bit more about that and how that looks in your family?
Absolutely. So accepting corrections before TSG, I wanted corrections to be over. And I didn't want to do them in the first place. I'm just like, why can't they act right? Thinking that I shouldn't need to for some reason. That's like thinking that I could take a cross-country road trip without a map. You know, I'm going to need course corrections. I'm going to need to know, I'm going to miss my exit. I need to look and check. So it's just, I can see the error in that. And of course, I should want to correct my children.
Mhm.
That shouldn't be an interruption to me. It doesn't have to feel like an interruption. And TSG really showed me the truth of that I can connect and be even closer to my children during and after a correction. And I like that Rachael said that. She said, you're correcting their behavior, not their heart. So you're correcting their behavior and you're connecting to their heart. And before TSG, I felt like to correct behavior, I needed to disconnect from them in some way. And now there's this connection. And so the correction and teaching I've found is so much more important than my to-do list. And once I've been putting in consistent, loving corrections, we can accomplish so much more. But that only happened as I shifted my focus from my checklist to the relationships. It was all a big shift for me because I was looking back and forth, like, what do I do about this? I was listening to one of your podcasts recently, and you were talking about, you're trying to fix problems. And it shifted from what do I need to do to fix these things to who do I need to be?
Right.
It finally just was, what does it matter if my house is clean and we made it to church on time and we looked stylish and I made this perfect paleo dinner? If I'm a grumpy, gripey, complaining, lecturing mom, that's not who I'm going to be and who I want to be. And so the 4 basic skills and being able to give a loving and connected correction and be as connected to them, or even more so during and after a correction, helped everything else just kind of work itself out when I was able to focus on doing that. And in our home, so a lot of times we talk about the skills and we read that, we teach them the skills when we read them the books or we're reading the cue cards, but then what does it look like for me? So what we do is I would say, so I see whatever behavior is happening. So say they're bickering and I say, hey, Asher and Charlotte, just now, you weren't having a calm face, voice, and body. And that's an understood instruction in our home. And since you chose not to have a calm face, voice, and body, you chose not to follow that instruction, you've chosen an extra chore. And then the chore was going to change according to their age appropriateness. And even you can do the simplest chore. The point is their change of heart. And the point is that they agree to do something that they weren't planning to do in the first place. And when they can calmly accept that. So sometimes I might have my 12-year-old load the dishwasher, and that's a 5-minute job. And that's great. But sometimes I just have them pick up something and throw it away. And I actually tend to do the lightest consequence when I'm working the most to stay calm, specifically to remind myself that the extra chore is not the point. The teaching and the connection are the point. Him accepting that correction from me is the point. The point is not that the living room got mopped or whatever that I might want to happen that day. And so in the scenario where I'm correcting them for bickering, say it's the little ones, and I'm like, hey, I need you to go give the chickens some water and check back. And so when they say okay in that correction, right then when they say okay, I'm able to say, good job looking at the person with a calm face, voice, and body. Good job accepting your consequence. When you do that, you choose freedom. When they check back, I'm able to praise them. Great job checking back. You're choosing freedom. So in that, what sounds like negative correction, there's so much positive being put in. And then very important, as well as the praise, is after they come back, we role play that 3 times. And so if it was something they did, we would do it back and forth. But if it was between them, I would have them role play it back and forth both ways and how they both should have spoken to each other.
Right.
And by the end of that, everybody's kind of giggling and laughing and having a good time. And it's just reconnecting in their brain, laying that new pathway so that that's the habit in their brain, is to do the right thing.
I love that so much. And for those of our sisters that are listening, and this all sounds like a foreign language, I have to say that's where I was for the last few months as I've been learning about this. However, this whole idea of earning an extra chore, I just have to say what's been the most appealing to me about accepting corrections and earning consequences and this whole concept of an extra chore. At first, I thought, what is an extra chore? And I learned about it by example from another friend of mine first. It was one of the 2 friends who recommended teaching self-government to me. Like I mentioned in our episode with Nicolene, where 2 separate friends happened to just both at the same time tell me about teaching self-government. well, one of the friends, I was with her at a park, and she pulled her son aside because he hit another kid. And so she had to say, you've earned an extra chore. So I need you to get mommy's water bottle and bring it over to me. And to listen to how she did this, I thought, what on earth is she doing? I was very confused because I'm used to a world of, hey, sit down, you're in timeout for a little while. Like that would be the world that I feel like I would have previously fallen into myself, or what I would have done if I was in her shoes. And so when I'm watching her have her kid do an extra chore and then he goes on his way, I thought, that's so interesting. He stayed calm. He was able to have this calm voice, face, and body. He earned his consequence. He followed through. She praised him. And I kind of watched this and I thought, what just happened with your 3-year-old? Like that was incredible. But at the same time, I was also thinking, what an odd or different reaction to him hitting somebody or throwing wood chips. I think it was that he threw wood chips at the park. And so it was just interesting because you think of your typical reactions to a situation like that. Like they get timeout, they get something taken away later that inevitably you're going to forget that you said they were not going to get dessert when everybody else got dessert. You're forgetting that you're going to follow through because it's for a plan for later. But then there's that part of you as a mom that you're like, oh, I'm at the park. I really don't want to have to follow through on a consequence. So I really don't want to make you sit in timeout because I want to be talking to my mom friend.
Right.
But she handled that situation in less than 30 seconds. So she didn't end up doing a role play. Like you're saying, you could do a role play afterwards and get everybody giggling. For us in that moment, she just handled it quickly. And then the kid was on his way. And so I love this whole extra chore, earning corrections, and cutting down on the decision fatigue, because there are so many extra chore opportunities all around us. Pick up that Nerf gun bullet that's been sitting there for 3 days, whatever. Like there's so many little chores that can be done that you can make a consequence that actually benefits the economy of your family. So thank you for sharing that skill.
Of course. And historically, work has been understood to build character. And what I have seen from the very first moment when my little girl was 4 and we did it, it built so much confidence in her. And she felt like she could do more things. They gained more skills, with just life skills, by doing even the simplest thing. She accepted a no answer for the first time after we had done the books and practices. And that moment happened and she got the correction and she accepted the no answer and went on and dropped the subject. And I was pretty impressed because that hadn't happened before. And then we went for a walk and my little boy's bicycle chain went off of his bike and he was about to stop and fix it. And she said, can I fix it? And we were like, you could try. Do you want to try? And she's like, yes. She said, I accepted a no answer earlier and that was hard. And if I could do that, I think I could do this too. And she put the chain back on the bicycle. And I was like, okay, we're onto something here. Let's do this TSG thing.
I love it.
Well, what I was going to say earlier too, to what Rachael was saying, is I think as an adult, taking no answers or being able to handle disagreement is very difficult. Like either you don't want to handle a disagreement at all and be like, I'll just take whatever is given to me, but not have a voice, like you said, and that confidence that comes from it. So equipping our children to be able to handle situations like that, if it's on the playground, if it's future coworkers or bosses, to be able to retain your voice while understanding authority and respecting it is crucial, and something that's so missing right now, because it's either you're a yes man all the time and you're giving your kids, okay, like I don't want to squelch your personal freedom. Like I don't want to tell you no. Like I remember a grandma at the library saying, oh, my daughter won't tell her granddaughter no. Like she refuses to say the word no. And this grandma was like, I'm not doing that. Like I am going to say no, which I was like, props to you.
Her mom's like, you're ruining my child by saying no. The grandma's like, you're ruining my grandchild by saying yes.
By never saying no. It's supposed to be healthy.
It gives you a really quiet confidence. Like
Sure.
you don't have to exude yourself. You're just really self-assured within yourself. It's astounding to watch. And actually, I've had 2 different people tell me that my 12-year-old was self-possessed, but a really interesting compliment to receive. But they were right. Like she exudes something, that she has this quality of assurance within her own self. And it's wild because that was not me. I was the super insecure 12-year-old in the corner. I mean, going along with whatever anybody else is doing pretty much.
So Rachael, could you tell us another one of the skills today?
Absolutely. Why don't we talk about disagreeing appropriately? So, disagreeing appropriately in our house might look as simple as I give an instruction to my child to unload the dishwasher. My child asks to disagree appropriately, and I listen to their explanation, which includes that there aren't any dishes in the dishwasher. Or I might give a no answer to playing with a friend, and they disagree and offer a counter suggestion. And then I'm able to choose to agree to that counter suggestion or not. Easy as that.
Yeah, sounds pretty simple. And I could see how it'd be very helpful. My 4-year-old has a lot of his own, what he would like to do. Like today, there was nothing fun to do in our house. And the suggestion I gave him was invalid because I was like, you can get the balls because we have those bags of balls, the plastic balls. And I was like, you can get those and you can put them in a big box and play with them. And he came back to me and he said, we don't have any big boxes, so we cannot have fun. But it was his way of working towards probably some goal of what he wanted. Kids are very clever that way, but it's good to listen to them. So I do appreciate that step. And I like in that example you gave with the dishwasher already being empty.
Right. Whereas previously, I might have given that instruction and my kid would have thrown a fit because there wasn't anything to do, or they would have just wandered around the house and I would have been like, has it been done? Because if they had actually followed the instruction, then they would have to check back and let you know that has been completed.
Well, and I like disagreeing appropriately too, because if the dishwasher is empty, you find yourself as a mom being like, oh, well, then I should give you a different extra chore. What's your thought on that, Janice?
Oh, with that, you would just give them something else. I would be like, oh, thank you so much. Go ahead and switch the trash or whatever. Okay. But it's the perfect way. So they're not talking back. It's so easy to fall into that, or easy for me because I'm mouthy, to be like, oh, the dishwasher's empty.
Right.
And instead, when you just take the moment, when they're able to be in front brain and take the moment to say, may I disagree appropriately? And then you're looking at them. You're not distracted either. You're right there with them. And then they say, it's just a whole different experience.
I think it's more of a, like they know who is in charge. That's what we say. We say in charge in our house because there have been a lot of power struggles. And it's like funny to me. During it, it doesn't feel that funny at times. And I don't feel proud of times of like a child pulling on the drawer repeatedly, trying to get into it. And I'm saying, no, we're not going to open that drawer. And it's just this repetition. And I keep repeating the same lines, or maybe I try to say something new and they're just still going at it. And I like got down on this level. I was like, I will always win. and then I was like, ooh, who would have thought, like, when I was imagining myself as a mom someday, right, that I would be like, fast forward to this moment of me being like, I'm in charge.
I'm going to win.
I will always win.
Arguing with a 3-year-old.
But it was one of my lower moments. But at the same time, I was like, but it's really good and healthy for you to understand that this is, and maybe it should have been said in a better way, obviously, and with more calmness, as y'all have mentioned. But it was like, you need to know because it helps you make sense of the world. If they're just thinking that, hey, if I just hit the ball really hard and it's like an ace and I just get what I want, then they're not going to play the game fairly. The idea is that we are coaching them and it's not an even, it's like, I'm trying to train you. Like I'm helping you understand the rules of the game and how this goes, but it's all within the context of the authority.
Which really has another book called The Roles Book. And that would really help. And you can even read that to your children, which I did read it to my older children and helped them understand their place within the families. And then that cuts down a lot on those power struggles. And then also, honestly, accepting no answers would be the skill that you would have used right there with the drawer. And that also eliminates those power struggles because if they don't accept a no answer, there's a consequence. And it's all very cause and effect, but with connection and love.
Yeah. So like in that situation, he's pulling on the drawer. He's wanting to get into something. He's wanting to get this roller pin that I got for my wedding and something that I treasure and has been in this drawer, and he's wanting to get it. And I'd already put it in. I told him, this is something that's special to mommy, and it's not for you. It's not a toy. This is not a toy. But he's like doing it again. So in that situation, walk me through, like, what?
Right. You would need to be calm.
Yes.
And you would need to look at your son. And since he's young, I recommend getting down on his level and saying, Mama is giving you a no answer to playing with her special rolling pin. And then he has the opportunity to accept that no answer, or he could disagree appropriately. And he could say, Mama, I understand this is a special roller pin, but I really want to touch it just for 2 minutes. And then I would reward that, since he came up with a great idea and used his skills and was very calm, and set that 2-minute timer and let him play with it. But if he didn't, if he went completely into back brain and lost his business and fell on the floor, then you just say, hey, bud, just now Mama gave you a no answer to playing with the roller pin. And instead of saying, okay, Mama, or asking disagree appropriately, you're choosing to fall on the floor and throw a fit. And when you do that, you're losing freedom and time to play. And what you should have done was say, okay, or ask to disagree appropriately. And so now you've chosen to earn an extra chore. For your extra chore, what I need you to do is take 2 big, deep breaths and check back. And then hopefully they stop and take 2 breaths and check back. And then you praise them because they're doing something really hard. They're stopping what they want to do and doing what you want to do.
And in teaching them these skills, it probably does take a lot of practice. And I would expect that, like, at the beginning of implementing these skills, and as your kids are learning the vernacular and everything, you might have to repeat a lot of those things, or understand that it may not happen the first time that they're like, oh, mother,
and
you know,
that's what's not included with us naming the 4 basic skills, is all of this has been pre-taught. So it's not that they were yanking the drawer open and we said it for the first time. We've already practiced it for a couple of weeks before we started implementing the correction for it. And that makes a big difference. And really, you would be shocked. Their brains catch it faster than ours do. Rachael had a 3.5-year-old foster baby. And in 2 weeks, that's what she was having him do for an extra chore. We were in the middle of the creek. I don't remember what he did at all. And something happened and he earned a correction. And she's like, okay, now I want, for your extra chore, I want you to say the steps to accepting the no answer or following instruction, whichever skill it was. I want you to say the steps with me. And he said, no, I can say it by myself. And he went through and said, look at a person with a calm face, voice, and body. Say okay or ask to disagree. I mean, he can barely say disagree, you know?
And previously I had been saying it with him.
Right. Exactly. That's how she had been doing it, coaching him along. But you'll be shocked at how fast they catch on and how much anxiety is lowered because they know exactly what you're going to say every time.
That's very helpful.
And so it really helps their anxiety lower.
You become completely reliable for them. And they know that you're going to be consistent and they're not scrambling for power anymore because you have already told them exactly what to expect. And then you're doing exactly what you said. So you're building a lot of trust in them, in you, which benefits everybody.
I think that is very beneficial to already trust that they will learn it, because that might be a lot of people's first hesitation to all of this is like, well, you don't know my kid. They are this way, but believing is the first step to be like, no, they can. To say like a 3.5-year-old that was not brought up in it earlier on. That's amazing.
Absolutely. I have 3 children that are all neurodiverse. So we have ADHD, we have anxiety, we have OCD, possibly on the spectrum, and then a 3.5-year-old that was super traumatized. And I expect each one of them to be able to do this, and each one of them absolutely can.
Well, I have loved listening to y'all share a little bit more about these first 2 skills. I just have to add on the disagree appropriately. Like I mentioned earlier, we have not read the book where the disagree appropriately steps are described, but the idea of them is mentioned in the other books. And so my 5-year-old automatically hears that. She's like, wait, I can do what now? If I don't want to say okay, I can disagree appropriately. So just because it's barely referenced as a step that you can do, like you mentioned, say okay or disagree appropriately. Even though we haven't talked about the steps to disagree appropriately yet, she hears that as I have an out. However, she does not yet know how to do it. And so it's been interesting that like at bedtime, for example, last night we're trying to go to bed and she's really struggling to go to bed. And she's just like, I'm not tired. I'm not tired. And I said, it's time for you to get in bed. And she didn't follow instructions. So we had to go through the whole role of, and I'm still learning it. I need to get the cue card so I can make sure I say it properly. But I said, you didn't follow instructions. So now you've earned a consequence and your consequence is an extra chore. So I need you to pick up that book and put it away. And she was like, oh, I don't want to do it. And I said, Cora, just so you know, if you wanted to stay up a little later, you could have disagreed appropriately here. And I was able to coach her in that moment and say, this is what you could have said. And so I talked to her about this as we're putting the book on the bookshelf. I said, I'll help you. I'll go with you. So I said, what you could have said is, Mom, can I disagree appropriately? And she said, okay. And so we started going through what she could say to disagree appropriately based on what I know from reading the book, not from the children's book, but from the Parenting a House United book. And so I said, you could have said, Mom, I want to read another book before I go to bed. And I said, so why don't you say that to me? And so she looked at me with big eyes like, what are you letting me ask? And I said, why don't you disagree appropriately? Say, Mom, I want to disagree appropriately. So she repeated it with kind of a little bit of a, where is this going to go? Like, what are you going to say, Mom? And so she said, can I disagree appropriately? I said, yes, you may. She said, can I read another book before I go to bed? And I said, yes, you can. Why don't you pick a book and we'll go read it in your bed together? And she was so excited. And suddenly a moment that she was having a hard time going to sleep became she gets to have one extra book. And obviously you don't want to reward staying up late every night with an extra book. But at the beginning of learning these skills, when they disagree appropriately, like you mentioned with the roller pin, letting him hold the roller pin for 2 minutes would be a good use of time. And you're overseeing it, you're watching, or in that instance, letting her read one extra book. At the beginning of learning these steps, it's been helpful. I mean, I'm still new at this. I've still got a lot to learn, but I do love the fact that, like y'all mentioned, it does cut down on this decision fatigue. It allows you to get to the child's level. So I love that y'all talked to us about these first 2 skills.
Oh, and Courtney, brace yourself, girl, because when you teach that disagree appropriate skill, it's going to be their favorite one.
Oh, it's everyone's favorite.
It's going to be hard and heavy at the beginning.
Okay, hard and heavy.
You definitely want to give in and agree when you can because you want to show them that it works. But
right.
It'll be every single time for a long time.
Oh, no.
Yes. But listen, once they start understanding that you're going to take the time and listen to them every time. And keep in mind too, the only piece that you missed was having her state your point of view. So she would say, I understand you want me to go to bed because we have a birthday party in the morning, church in the morning, whatever. But I want to read, can I read another book? Just one more. You have to state the other person's point of view. I understand that it's no answer because of this. Okay. And so sometimes they're just completely wrong and you can explain it to them. So that's the only piece. So when they've done that and they know that you're going to seek to understand them every time, and when they know you're on their side, there's no more power struggle. There's no more like yanking back and forth. Who wants what? We're on the same side. And so when you do give those no answers, because there are lots of no answers, every day we get no answers.
Right.
I do as an adult. My husband does on his job. We all do. And as that trust builds that you're listening to, they're just able to accept no answers when they come. It'll blow your mind.
Right. Because they got to have a little say and you understood them.
They have the connection. They can rest in it.
They don't have to throw a tantrum because you can understand where they're coming from. Yeah. Tantrums are so few and far between.
Really?
It's a world of difference.
Huge.
Oh, wonderful. Now, Rachael and Janice, thank you for all the information you've shared so far. We know y'all have more to share, which we'll be talking about next week. But for now, could y'all share where our sisters can find you if they want to learn more? Janice, we'll start with you.
Sure. I am on the Teaching Self-Government website as a certified mentor, and you can find me there and connect if you're looking for one-on-one mentoring. And I'm on Instagram as Encouraged Mama.
Wonderful. What about you, Rachael?
I also can be found on the Teaching Self-Government website under my name, Rachael Moss, or it might be under Shane and Rachael Moss. And my Instagram page is Bossy Mossy, BOSSY MOSSY.
Love it.
Awesome. And ladies, do you have a call to action for our sisters to implement this week?
So my call to action this week would be to take the opportunity each time you're interacting with your child and look them in the eyes.
Love that call to action. That is such a good one. And especially as we implement the having a calm voice, face, and body. It's a lot easier for us to feel calm when you're looking into the eyes of your child. So thank you for issuing that call to action. Are there any other concluding thoughts for this week's episode? I know we're going to talk more next week, but anything from today's topics that you feel like our sisters need to know?
Yes, I just want to encourage everyone to give this a try. And perhaps you could think of this as a 6-week long experiment and just try it imperfectly. And after that 6 weeks, see what changes come about with consistent calmness on your part. And I know you will be surprised and delighted at the result.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this episode, ladies. It has been such a pleasure to have you on. We are so excited y'all are going to join us again next week to continue to wrap up these 4 basic skills by talking about the other 2 that we did not even get to touch today. So we're going to wrap up today's episode feeling so motivated to better issue corrections to our children and help them disagree appropriately with us. Those are 2 fantastic basic skills that we've gotten to talk about, and we're excited to talk more about the other 2 next week, which are following instructions and receiving a no answer or criticism. So we'll be talking about those next week. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachael and Janice. Sisters, thanks as always for listening. This has been a truly educational and inspiring conversation. Sisters, we remind you to check our show notes for any resources that we've referenced today, including websites or links to the Instagram and TSG websites that Janice and Rachael mentioned, as well as a minute marker timeline. So if you want to jump back to any part of the conversation, you can look at our minute marker timeline to see where we talked about certain skills or fun banter that we had. We invite you to share this episode with a friend if you know somebody who could benefit from it, which I'm going to tell you is just about everyone. So be sure to share this episode if you feel so inclined, and we will talk to y'all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Courtney and Carley.
Don't all those things sound so empowering and desirable? We think so too. So without further ado,
Hold on. Where did the rest of my text?
I don't know.
Where did the rest of my text go?
I get
Without further ado, where did it go?
sorry.
I typed it up.
I'll just pick it up from sorry, I could totally fill in. Okay, so without further ado, Rachael Moss and Janice Mireles.